Joe, we are back at it again. I can't even tell you how happy I am to be seeing you and chatting with you and
Likewise.
learning from you again. And just, this is awesome. And today, I think, especially for me, is going to be super interesting because this is all about kind of what is in SQL Server 2025 AI and what do I need to understand and what do I need to do to be prepared? And is there anything, I mean, I guess I'll throw something in. Do I even need to do something in my earlier databases to possibly prepare myself for upgrade or anything? I don't think so, but anyway,
Yeah,
I'll let
that's a,
you
that's
go.
that's a good one, by the way. Like of the prep, no, because it wasn't there before. It's the classic
Right.
new data
It's a
type.
new feature, so there's not
When
much
you
you
have the
have to
new
do.
geometry, geography, or XML or JSON, like it's once it's there, that creates your anchor.
Yeah,
Now, by
yeah.
the way, there's immediately I start thinking of exceptions to that, like if you're storing it in text, but it's
Oh,
just storing 1500 FP32 in text, not so fun. Probably not doing that.
well,
So
hopefully that's been not supported for I don't even know how many releases. I mean, you're
I
talking
don't,
text versus end text.
yeah, just even like people taking numbers and
And
putting them in
char
text,
it.
or
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I have not heard of somebody trying to retrofit vector embeddings into earlier versions of SQL Server. If they are, haven't helped them if it's more
Yeah.
than like 300 dimensions. Um, but let's back up. So last
Yeah.
time we talked about vector embeddings. So I have these models that were trained on the internet that know how to take your text and convert them into a series of numbers that are vector embeddings, and that vector embedding for your particular value has meaning. It has semantic meaning. So I can say
Right.
this if it was um, a picture of a chipmunk, it knows that the chipmunk was brown and it was sitting on a tree branch, and it looks like it was evening time. It can capture a
Ah.
lot of that rich context, and then that allows you to then do searches beyond like classic keyword searches. SQL Server 2025, to your earlier comment of what's in there, has the vector data type as a native data type, and it's
Okay.
stored in an optimized fashion. The way it gets extracted out, it's friendly. You can see in SQL Server Management Studio the list of values. If I have 1536 dimensions, we should talk about dimensions as well.
Okay.
But okay, so we have vector data type. All right, so
So
that's
is
yeah.
that
Oh,
a
go ahead.
data type that's tied to another column or it's something that you build into a column? How
It would
does
be
how
its
does it
own.
get
It's
there?
it, it's a first class data type. So when you define it, and this kind of
Okay.
leads to this is going to be, I think, a fun playground for you to think about as well. Of um, I have this sample database that I use for the Vector Search Essentials course. That's called Semantic Shores DB, and
Okay.
I took 100,000 properties for sale, like synthetic properties that are listed for sale. And there's natural columns like, I have bedrooms, bathrooms, I have a property description, like a free text description of the property. Um, you can then add another column, and that could be your vector embedding column. Now you can
Okay.
add it to the existing table. There's pros and cons of that, or you can normalize it out and go for this property. I have a one-to-one relationship with this property. Here's the vector embedding in another table. But it's not like, and I think the part you're hinting at, it's not like you do like a conversion function where it does the embedding real time against my property listing description. You would have to go through the process of embedding it, and we could talk about that at some point as well.
So like you pointed at the text and then you build the vector column and then you can
Yes.
query the vector column.
Yeah, so if let's say I'm just starting off, like you're like, I want to try this all out. One of the first things you want to decide is, well, what is your embedding model? You could go to Hugging Face. There's the MTB, which kind of shows like here's the top 10 models that you can use for embeddings. Here's some of the pros and cons of them. Here's the ones that perform best. There's open source models. There's
Okay.
closed source. Um, for the Vector Search Essentials course, I used OpenAI's one of their embedding models. So
Okay.
I built a Python app that went through and said for each property listing description, generate an embedding and insert it into this table that had the vector data type. I'll
Okay.
pause there.
So that's interesting. So I'm going to have to call to an external API to build this? Like you used Python to do this.
So I
So
use
there's,
Python. Yeah, so this is where you get into some interesting stuff. So there are
okay,
ways to do it in T-SQL. Now, by the way, that is not a judgment of whether you should, but there are
okay.
ways. So let's kind of take it through. There's different paths. And I talk about a little bit about this in the course as well, where it's
Yeah.
like external versus internal.
I know. And
So
the part of these first couple of videos is before me watching the course and being a
yeah, yeah.
novice. And that's why it's really fascinating. And I'm going to do later, watch the course and then do later videos with you.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. You
but
could be
it's
like
good because I
that
think,
slide.
well, but I think this is good because DBAs won't have a solid understanding yet. I mean, they're starting like me, like, what does this mean for me? Like, I don't understand. Like, do I have everything in the database that I need and I just say, point it at this column and build it here and query? Or are there other pieces I need to get all of this to work?
Right, right. And by the way, nobody is an expert at this yet. By the way, there's people that are so the thing is, if anybody's stressed out about like, oh, I have so much catching up to do, like this is all Wild West right now.
Yeah.
And if you meet somebody again, like if you meet somebody who says that they're an expert in it, that's a moment of pause, right?
Yeah,
Because
it's
it's like, well,
very
they might be a data
difficult.
science expert on this model, or they have real life experiences, but just know like this just landed in SQL Server 2025. It's just landed over the last 2, 3 years in other products. So
Yeah.
don't
The
get too
whole
stressed about it.
concept is
The
new
whole concept
everywhere.
is,
Yeah.
and so like the best practice, I'm, and again, I'm finding this a lot where I'll ask basic questions and realize nobody's written about it. Like, for example, the whole selection of an embedding model.
Okay.
Um, when does it matter how sophisticated of a model you choose? And by that I mean one choice you have to make is how many dimensions are you going to have for your vector data type?
Which also
And dimensions
determines
being
size,
it
space,
determines
right?
size. And so the more dimensions, the richer the embedding. And so and so your application may truly require something that has like 3,000 dimensions,
Right.
or it could get away with something that has 500 or so dimensions.
Right.
The
Right.
difference in storage space is significant between the two,
Right. Right.
unless you're using something called quantization. But even then, there's trade-offs there. So, but you hear that discussion, and you think, well, everybody must already know this. No, because there are times when for your data distribution, you have a case where all of a sudden the results you get because you went from a large model to a small model are no longer the top 10 results you would have chosen.
Wow. Okay.
So, so it does matter. So you have upstream things which may not be a DBA's decision, by the way. It may be a developer has already chosen this, or a data scientist has already chosen this,
Right.
and they're
Okay.
saying just store this. And at that point, you're saying create table, column name, and then you're saying vector data type, and then the number of dimensions.
Right.
But
Okay.
ideally, that DBA is going back and going, whoa, that's a lot of
Hey, you
dimensions.
just
Are you
chose the
sure? Yeah,
3,000, and that's going to
yeah,
create gigabytes of extra storage that's
exactly,
needed and backed up and
exactly.
managed and all the other things. Like if it's a failover cluster kind of environment, now it changes and so forth. Although that's a whole nother discussion, I suppose.
By the way, here's an exercise we could do that like back when I was a product manager officially, like we would do I can statements to try to put ourselves in the
Yeah.
customer's shoes. So like, and it was a way to like flip things. So like, what can I do with SQL Server 2025?
Okay, that's
Like the
good.
I cans. So I can store vector embeddings. For float 32, I can store up to almost like 2,000 some dimensions. I can also store half of that at a 16 float 16, but it's a preview feature, and that's a different episode. But that's like preview right now as of GA.
Okay.
So what can I do? I can store vector embeddings for semantic search. I can search against them, which sounds obvious, but sometimes it's like you have the data type and you have the search functions to go with it, so I can use them.
Okay.
I can, and this kind of points to your earlier comment, I can call a function, AI generate embeddings, that can create the embedding within T-SQL. Okay.
Okay.
To
Yeah.
do that, you have to do some things. You have to like create a model. You're still pointing out to either like a local model through Olama or Onyx, or you can call like Azure OpenAI or OpenAI. So you're still doing that thing that the developer had to do, but now you've got the convenience of this T-SQL function.
Okay.
So I can call a function to do my embedding. What else? I can chunk. So sometimes you have these very large documents, and you can have semantic blurring where it's like, okay, it's 500-page document. Um,
Yeah,
the
that'd be
meaning,
a lot
it's
of
like
data.
everything. Yeah. So
Right.
it's like somebody, so I love this analogy the most. The equivalent is like, imagine you have a film, it's an hour and a half long, and you take the film and you go, let's embed the film. And imagine you take every single frame and just overlay it from start to finish, and it would be nonsensical,
Yeah, I was
right?
going to say every single
Yeah.
frame would be, I mean, the
Yeah, so
amount of
chunking
data
is
that
like
that would
pulling out
generate.
key moments, like the person falling off the cliff or the rainbow over the end of it. Like it picks key inflection points,
How
so
does it
that you
know
can.
what the key inflection points are?
So the I can statement here for SQL Server 2025 is I can chunk based on a fixed token or fixed character
Okay.
length. They do
Okay.
characters. We should talk about tokens at
So
some
it
point.
doesn't know, it just chooses a certain
It goes
amount.
every like 300, and you can pick an overlap, so you can kind of have
Okay.
connective tissue. But
That's
there are a
cool.
ton. Your intuition's already leading you to other spots, which is there's a lot of value in semantic chunking. So like there's value of going, hey, maybe you want the whole paragraph, maybe you want the sentence, but maybe you want just meaning, like part one, part two, part three, um, but only
Okay.
when it's part of the same subject. Like I only want the scene where she finds the dog lost, and then
Yeah.
I want the other scene where the wicked stepfather is doing blah 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 blah. So
Yeah, yeah.
you can use actually LLMs to figure out where to chunk things.
Wow. Okay.
And then it makes and why go through all this process? It's for relevance. So when I want to do semantic search, the better your embeddings are, the higher fidelity to the specific chunks, the more likely it is you're going to get relevant results back.
Right.
So the
Right.
I can there is I can chunk. It's naive chunking, but I can do it.
Yeah.
Um, and I
Wow.
can do approximate to your our last discussion. I can do approximate KNN for
Right.
fast retrieval, and I can do exact brute force. Um,
Okay.
and so there's a few other things in there, but those are the big ones. And those, by the way, even those primitives are super powerful
Yeah.
and super helpful for the applications. And by the way, if SQL Server doesn't provide them, somebody else is right now. And so
Right.
somebody is going somewhere else to do these basic things like Postgres, obviously Oracle, MongoDB, Elasticsearch, Pinecone, VVA Quadra. I mean, all these companies are doing this.
Wow.
TurboPuffer, which has the best name, by the way, TurboPuffer. Yeah,
I
yeah,
do like that one too.
yeah, yeah.
um, so understanding what SQL Server has and how to do things within SQL Server, and then of course its limitations and whether or not you need any of those other things, and then whether or not you will need to branch out. I mean, that's essentially what you need to know to at least speak the right language and understand what you can provide. And I guess now it is time for me to watch the course so that I
Sorry
can
about it.
get more knowledge on this, because I mean I did read a few things and I do understand a few things, but now I want to really know how it all connects together and how I actually implement it. Okay, and that's what you do in Vector Search Essentials, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it was intended to be. It's a couple hours long. I could have gone 10 hours on it, but this is like let's bridge you into like if you just had to know where to start, what are some of the things you must know?
Yeah,
And so really
absolutely.
just get you started. And it's going to evolve too, by the way. So like a year from now, there will be some war stories,
Yeah.
and there will be there's things we can anticipate, and
I
things.
suspect we'll have a whole
Yeah.
bunch of these little discussions along the way,
Oh yeah, yeah. And
which
also
I'm,
things of use cases we never even imagined
yeah,
might pop up. So there'll be positive and negative or constructive. So
for sure, for sure. No, it's, given that I retired a few years ago, and I don't necessarily want to get into the implementation of all of this for customers, but it is just fascinating to discuss. I know you're consulting on AI, so that's really cool, and you're getting all the war stories and the hands on. For me, it's just kind of fascinating to take my knowledge of databases in the past and then just look at how things are changing. So I'm actually really greatly enjoying these discussions, and now it's time for me to get a little bit smarter on this and watch the course and
photo library vector. I think I
I've
want to see
actually,
that. Yeah.
you said 24,000 photos. My photos I measure in terabytes, and I have roughly 8 or 9 terabytes of photos. So I need to cull a lot of them down, but now that's interesting because that is something I could potentially do, but I just can't even imagine the indexes that would need to be created on so many photos. And for me, underwater and different. So this, I mean, it's
If you need it, by the way. Yeah.
no,
So
I
like,
know, of course,
yeah.
but it is. So I had somebody approach me from iNaturalist and saw a photograph that I had taken of a blue-ringed octopus. And I then wanted to go back and see if I could find all my blue-ringed octopus. Now, in Lightroom, you can catalog, and I have to specifically say, this photo has a blue ringed octopus in it. And I have to do that when I upload my photo. Well, I don't actually upload them, but I take Lightroom and point them at the directory, and then it has the metadata in Lightroom. So I guess my point is, when I got sloppy, lazy person that I am, and did a dive trip where I was just uploading photos and not categorizing them, now I can't find those. So how cool would it be to be able to go through all my photos and say, find all the blue ringed octopuses? It's
Yeah.
actually
Yeah, it's
octopuses.
by the way, that is 100% something that works. I also had it do, and by the way, it went too crazy. Like I had Claude Code say start creating subfolders by area and topic that you think would be industry best practices, which I didn't know what it was going to pick, but I was curious to find out. And I woke up the next morning after it had been cataloging, it was like 4,000 folders, and it was like um, man by tree looking into the sunset, and that was the folder name. And I'm like, how many of those are there? There's like 2 photos, and then there's another one,
Wow.
receipt blowing by car tire. Like, so you do have to
Wow.
constrain it. But then I said, okay, let's just stick with year. And it was like, okay. And so then it was able to do that without actually using the vector component because it could look at the metadata.
Right.
Um, but the key thing is I don't have to hunt. It doesn't do the facial recognition unless you did something like that, and I wanted to stop short of that creepy factor. But
Yeah.
like, um, but I have been able to find my photos now,
Yeah, that's
and so
amazing.
so it's definitely something that works. And there's different. Also, it happens to be that is an area really that's cutting edge on like I think they call it like late stage interaction of
Yeah.
search.
Well,
So just it's
and
pretty
Adobe
powerful.
is building those things on top of its products like Lightroom. So I'm sure that if I, in the past, if I've stored my library
Yeah.
online, I could do a lot more uh, facial recognition and things like that. I use Lightroom Classic because I'm often in remote locations where I'm not connected to the internet.
Mhm.
So that's, I haven't had all of those features. So it is interesting, and I can't wait to see as we move forward. And I'm very excited that this stuff is in SQL Server too, and at least gives us that ability. I mean, I think of my nature photos very differently than, let's say, product thumbnails versus a series of photos that show the product in situ, like in its
Yeah.
location, in a kitchen, in whatever, and then being able to go and say, what does this particular refrigerator look like if somebody has a white kitchen or whatever, and then being able to find that. And you know those are cool capabilities that we've just never had that option. And I can
For sure.
see a lot of that stuff being very powerful in SQL Server. So I'm pretty excited. So I'm looking forward to learning more as well. What would you say to DBAs like me that are old and and
Hi.
and lazy, yeah, and
Welcome.
lazy,
Join us.
and yeah, and just skeptical. I mean,
Yeah.
skeptical is a good word. Like, what would
Ah,
you
such a good question. Yeah.
what
Yeah.
would you say?
Well, I think so. Here's the thing. Philosophically, I think it's our survival instincts have been to question things as they come in as DBAs. Like that's our personality.
Yeah,
Like
for
there's a
sure.
continuum. There's like security experts, then there's DBAs, then there's like blah, Wild West. Like so
Yeah.
on the distribution, we have to be because we're the ones that get paged at 2 a.m. We're the ones that have to restore the database. We're the ones that have to deal with the knock-on side effects of poor decisions, um, and
Absolutely.
and then also the blame acceptor kind of thing. So please continue to be in that mindset because I'll give you an example where I'm a little bit afraid of is those vector embeddings. Let's say you start doing them on HR documents or on
Ooh.
financial documents or things that are GDPR requirement or compliance. Like that is still nothing magic happen. You have a series of numbers. There's things that can be derived from that. Sure, you might not be able to pull the social security number, but you might be able to get other things that you shouldn't. So this is still something that should be secured properly. This kind of
Wow.
ties
Yeah,
into
interesting. Yeah.
the whole discussion of like, hey, you want to DBA should be educated on this enough so they have a seat at the table so they can stop bad things from happening. So like what
Interesting.
you don't
Yeah.
want is somebody like, I don't want to have to deal with all the security compliance stuff. Like I'm just gonna put this over here. Now you've lost control of the situation from a security perspective. You also are relying on whatever they've set up over there. I'm not saying that it would necessarily be bad, but who knows? And then the other thing is just even recoverability. Like, what do you do in an outage? Do you have that in your run book?
Right.
And so I would just say this. I'm not trying to change any attitudes here. I have it too. Um, it's been interesting to watch even just some of the decisions of the major frontier model creators, like what they say and what they actually do. It's
Yeah.
sometimes alarming.
Yeah.
And so you have to be on guard. So I would just say learn enough to have that seat at the table. You don't
And to
have to love
speak
it.
intelligently and to
Yeah.
understand like what the issues are when somebody starts saying they need that. I think in terms of data and size, they need the 3,000 dimension model on a
Hmm.
27 million row table where the document's average size is 5 meg or something like that. And you start going, I don't know what the math is for that, but that's not going to be small. So let's talk about this, because then we have to
Yeah.
back it up, manage it, mirror it, whatever, have it on a secondary site and recover it and stay online. And yeah, I
Did you
mean,
plan for that?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
By the way,
Okay.
this reminds me of the Paul used to have like a slide for his HADR one where it was like tornadoes, flooding. Do you remember that slide? It was like all
Well, I
the
remember
DR
him
things.
drawing the what was the United States and talking about disasters in different regions, and it always ended up
Yes,
looking like
yeah,
a cow.
yes. So it would be like cow, yeah, cow eating the wire. But I almost think like we have the same kind of set of like, for me, it's more philosophical, but it's like Anthropic, Gemini, OpenAI, Quen. Like you've got the different open source models, closed source model. Like in terms of
Yeah.
like the universe of things, you can decide to ignore it, and somebody else is going to have to deal with it. But if there's even just a little bit of you that it's like, I am interested in this. I don't agree
Yeah.
with it, but I'm interested in it. There's a lot there,
Yeah.
and it's multi-factor.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to even more discussions with you about a variety of topics, Joe. This is
Likewise,
great
likewise.
fun. And
We were worried originally. Will we have enough to talk
I
about?
know
No,
it's like,
we'll have
are
enough.
these only going to be like 3 minutes long? We should have
Yeah.
known.
Oops.
Thank you, Joe. I will see you again
Thank you,
soon. And
Kimberly.
thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it. Bye, everyone.
Bye.